Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're open the meeting for the Natural Resource Board for the City of Sebastian. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Michelle, can we go ahead with the roll call, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, Board. First on our roll call, George Millar.
Present.
Gil Gordian.
Present.
Andrea Ring.
Present.
Rose Glacier.
Here.
Jack Lampiasi.
Here.
Bob Progolski.
Here.
Jim Clifton. Kirthi Waragoda. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd also like to welcome our new member, our official member, Jim. He's now a full-time member instead of an alternate. And I'm sorry, I know I'm going to mispronounce your name, the gentleman at the end. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
My name is Kirthi Waragoda.
And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just push the...
I worked for my country for the government of Sri Lanka and retired in 2004. My positions were mostly in management, and in fact I did a master's course here in public administration at the Kennedy School here, Harvard University, in 1970s. So after I moved over here and became a citizen here, I did in 2005. I thought I have a lot of spare time, so I could be able to contribute for the place where I live now. So that's how I came before the council and said I'm available, and I'm happy that the council selected me as an alternate member of this committee.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome aboard. At this time, I would also like to ask if there's any agenda modifications from the present agenda.
Mr. Chair, I did submit an email to staff on some past issues that we wanted to look over again. One of them being some signage at the marinas, at the two marinas along Indian River Drive, as far as folks going out and visiting the islands. And the city did make up two signs, one at Main Street and the other one at the Yacht Club. And it's just not visible enough. And I'm wondering if we can place another sign.
Okay, let's bring that up during member matters. We'll just put that down, just make a note of it, and we'll bring that up under member matters. Okay? Any other input for any agenda modifications? Okay, there being none. We received the minutes from the last two meetings we had. We had the workshop, and we also had our regular business meeting of August the 4th. Are there any amendments or changes to those minutes? Is there a motion to approve and a second?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept. Do you want approval of both sets of minutes at the same time or separate?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just do both of them at the same time.
I move that we accept both the August 4th, 2015 meeting minutes and August 14, 2015 special meeting minutes as presented. And I want to just mention that Michelle takes copious notes. Definitely, almost verbatim. Very well done. At any rate, make a motion that we accept these as presented.
Is there a second? Second. All those approve? Say aye.
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 Any dissent? Great. That's unanimous. Unfinished business. Oyster mat projects. The status of the permits with the Army Corps of Engineers. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of you, you have, I made edits based on our August 14th meeting. I have to be totally candid that due to my work schedule, I have not been able to finish the some of the graphics. Michelle had contacted me, and I just hadn't honestly been able to get off work to get with her and finish those. So, but I did provide in this document all the edits that we made based on our discussion, and included all that information. So, honestly, we're not quite there with the core permit, and that's due to my schedule. And as I said, Michelle had contacted me and asked if she could help status, but I hadn't been able to get to meet with her yet. So we still need to make some adjustments. For instance, number 5, you'll see that provide a typical cross section for the project as we discussed. We haven't developed that yet, so that would be one of the things that is still missing. The other question I had, or I guess a comment, is under number 3, where the first page, item number 3, where it talks about no exhibits were provided, and it talks about asking it to describe monitoring activities that would take place, frequency of monitoring, and so on. I just wanted the board's kind of comments. I just said the second sentence, or third sentence, excuse me, says monitoring will be completed by volunteers on a monthly basis following accepted monitoring guidelines to determine the presence of oysters and so on. I don't know if there's another resource person that we can go to that knows more about the proper monitoring. My point in all that is this is just I made some generic statements based on our edits, but it really doesn't. If I was a Corps of Engineers person, I'd say, well, what does that really mean? And so I would, at some point, like input, it can be in the form of, an email without back and forth, but an email of someone I could contact, because I don't know what the standard monitoring protocol is for this type of this type of oyster mat. And if we could get that, and from the information we had that I believe maybe Gil, you went out with the folks, they would probably be the right people to ask, but from the trip report, there was nothing about monitoring, and like I said, I kind of winged it there, and I would really need might want to beef that up a little bit, because I'm sure the Corps is going to want to know, okay, how do you determine success? I honestly don't know what the proper monitoring is for that, so.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Gil.
Bob. Matthew Anderson from the Indian River Lagoon Preserve, real quick, information-wise, FYI. They did set some mats. Actually, they set bags out last Monday on island number 1, on the northeast side of island number 1. And speaking to Matt on that particular day, I can communicate with Matt, and I can be the point person for the board to go ahead and get his input on monitoring, on a consistent monitoring, if we lay down the mats.
Okay, I know.
He was going to show up tonight, but unfortunately he's not able to come here tonight.
Okay, I understand here, Bob and Gil, it says spats were detected in the proposed sites. Monitoring will be completed by volunteers on a monthly basis following accepted monitoring guidelines to determine the presence of oysters. I think you identified that we would be doing it on a monthly basis. That should establish, the criteria. However, it doesn't necessarily point out who. And I think they might want to focus more in on that, be it a member of our board here or another individual.
Yeah, and I'm fine with however I can clarify that. I guess my point, as someone who my day job is dealing with this kind of issue, but on a much larger scale, like in all of South Florida, and I have staff that we do monitoring and we do performance measures and those things. Just saying we're going to monitor on a monthly basis, I would usually require very explicit. What does that mean? If you get X number of oysters per square foot, you get what's what we call performance measures. So if you think this is adequate, I'm happy to go with it. But I can call Tammy and ask her. I hadn't talked to her recently about it, but she may want more specificity in terms of the monitoring and how do we determine success. If the board is, willing to provide some input on that, like I said, you can even just send me just a direct email so we don't violate any of these.
What I would say is at this present time, to keep this ball rolling, go ahead and contact Tammy to see if this language is sufficient or if she wants to see some quantitative criteria.
Okay.
Growth rate.
Yeah, growth rate or, like I said, some quantitative criteria also established with this because I think if we have any success, it's better than what we have right now.
Oh, agreed. Yeah,
So if we can get those measures and if we can get that probably within the next, would you say next week would be reasonable?
I'll commit to because my next week
Next
is
2 weeks?
is 2 weeks, and if I can work with Michelle, like I said, I take the responsibility for not having everything completed today because of my schedule, and Michelle certainly was willing to help me out, but I would say within the next 2 weeks.
That sounds great. And then that way, if you can communicate with Michelle, then Michelle can, if staff would be obliged to communicate that with the general email back to the board, and then I can communicate directly with Michelle regarding that, because I would like to see us have an established where we can get the permits going forward.
I agree. I'm more than probably anyone want to get this done. Because it takes long, it's, so I can move on to other things.
Would that be all those, what about the other chart that we mentioned in number 5, the cross-section chart? I know when I spoke with staff late last week, before all the issues with the pending storm at that time, they mentioned about they might have a cross-section, or we could develop a cross-section. Mr. Watanabe, regarding the cross-section of the map?
I think in our discussion at our last meeting, there was a Brevard County
Brevard
sample.
County had a sample, right?
I would assume this takes something similar to that. They're not really looking for a detailed, surveyed cross-section. They just want to see, from the road to where you're tentatively going to place the mats, changes in elevation. And I think their true issue of this cross-section is that, can you access the location from the shoreline? Really,
Right.
That's all they're looking for.
Which it is very easily without any flotation devices.
And as long as you show some sort of a profile that says the road, here's the edge of the waterway, and it slopes down at maybe 4 to 1, 5 to 1, and 3 feet, 4 feet down is the bottom of the water. Here's the water 3 feet above, and they can see it all, and they say, okay, that makes all the common sense in the world. And they can see right off the bat from a typical cross section, it's not a navigable waterway. It's in shallow waters, and just a picture alone of that diagram, I think, will answer a lot of their questions. Going back to the other question that Bob was talking about, it's okay to contact the agency to get direction. Different than I think the projects you've been working on from a national, these are very small projects. They don't want you to write an encyclopedia of the details. They just want to have just the basic information and an understanding what you guys want to do, and that's all they want, really. So I think what you have here, maybe some more detail in terms of, I think, Chair, you're correct, who is going to be monitoring is that the NRB board member,
Right.
the Boy Scouts, city staff, highlight a few people, monthly. I don't think there's really, because there's no way to, unless you go out there and test the waters and test, that we actually clean the water. I don't think they're going to want to see that in this type of a, permit. They understand that the overall lagoon improves with these oysters. It's been proven already. I think the more oysters you have, the better it is. The only success I would say is we have oysters.
Well, that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. I think what Bob was reflecting on a few minutes ago was like the growth rate of the oysters, not necessarily the cleanliness of the lagoon at that point, but the growth rate.
Even the growth, I think as long as you have a project that within a year or two has some oysters grow, I think that's the success.
I agree. That's what I was saying. Like I said, anything is better than what we have now.
Correct. There's no benchmark where they say you have to have so many oysters per square foot, and that determines you're going to have so many gallons of clean water. I think in these projects alone, if you're doing something to demonstrate that you're trying to make the lagoon a better water quality by having some natural way of doing it with these oysters, I think any one oyster is better than none. you know, that's how I
and
see
Mr.
it.
Chair, I wasn't right. I'm not trying to overthink it at all, and I appreciate that. I just didn't know if we wanted to measure, I don't know, one oyster per square yard, or if there was some measurement that we should target. And maybe there's not. I'm asking it rhetorically.
I think at this present time, just the success of oysters reestablishing themselves
I can certainly
would be progress,
provide that
or
kind of
showing
wording.
a progress. I don't think we necessarily need to, determine the success based on the quantitative, just that we are achieving a growth of oysters. I think that would be the success. Like I said, that would be better than what we have now.
I agree.
Is there any other points?
Not really. I incorporated all the other points I've incorporated, such as, just as an example, number 3, you can see the last sentence. Based on Frank's input, I said if the city Sebastian Public Works Department will remove mats if there are safety issues, including severe weather conditions that could cause the mats to be dislodged. Just very simple. That,
Right.
There's a way, because the question was asked, remediation if it's not successful, and so I basically incorporated, took copious notes and incorporated everything that was said at our last meeting and included in that. The only other thing that Gil was going to give some input on, and I may not have it, is basically
Distance?
it's the distance from navigation channels, and I just said, I've got to find it's under number 4, letter O. It says, identify and state if the area will have markers installed and the type that will be used. And I said, pretty generically, once again, from our input, PVC poles would be placed to delineate the corners and boundaries of the oyster mat project site. Informational signs will be installed around the site to alert users to the presence of the mats. The proposed sites are more than because then the last sentence of the request for additional information says, please locate the project so that it does not pose a navigational hazard to the Indian River. And I said the proposed sites are more than a quarter mile away from any navigational channels. That was my best guess. So if anybody has any input that's different than that, I'm certainly willing to take that.
I think that pretty much covers it. The only thing I'm concerned about right now is the cross-section drawing. Is
Right.
that something you would be able to complete,
Yeah, I
or
will
do you
work-
want us to get someone else involved?
No, I can do it within,
that project?
once again, I take the responsibility that I didn't have everything done today, and I'll work with Michelle, and I think Frank's is absolutely right. I'm probably overthinking it to a certain extent for the level that I'm dealing with, so we'll get it done. We'll get that done.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you very much for taking the lead on this and accomplishing that.
And I will check with Tammy again, just to make sure that the kind of a generic monitoring statement is adequate for what they use, because once again, this is a beneficial project. It's not like it's a big development and we're causing a lot of impact. That's usually when the Corps wants a lot of monitoring for water quality and things.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bob. Question to Mr. Gill. I know I read earlier about the gentleman from the Indian River Lagoon
The Aquatic
or
Reserve.
Aquatic Preserve Committee coming to speak here. I wish that had been brought up during the end of last meeting, if that might have been a possibility. And maybe we can schedule that when we come up to items for next agenda. Possibly have discussion about bringing that on for the next meeting. I do have a question for Mr. Watanabe, because I don't want to get into any conflicts like we discussed at the workshop, at the special called meeting, about any other organizations, like the Freshwater Fish and Wildlife Commission, if we could possibly have anybody from that organization speak to us.
The last conversation I had with Jeff Beal was that he was unable to attend that last meeting and this meeting. I'm still waiting to hear if he could attend the October meeting. I do want to express again, these agency staff, they do not want to be in any commission meeting where there's other people challenging them. I've been to many commission meetings where, you have other people that, and that's rightfully so, but I'm just giving you a heads up. For me, in my career, especially as a city engineer, I'm not going to place an agency member where there's another member pointing fingers. It's just not right.
I'm in 100% agreement with that. I agree fully with that comment because the one agency is a permitting agency and the other agency is not a permitting agency. I'm just saying, which we'll discuss for next agenda item, in lieu of the Fish and Wildlife Commission representative, Mr. Beal, or his designee not being here, if we could possibly have some input from the other agency, but I don't want any issues of conflict. I know we had some notes from the freshwater fish about the bags versus the mats, or a combination thereof. I would like to hear from them first, if at all possible. Any estimate on the likelihood of Mr. Beal or designated being here on the next meeting?
Like I said, I'm waiting to hear back from him. The other option I'm looking at is having someone from St. John's, River Water Management District. Those are the two permitting agencies. Those are the ones that's going to issue the permit. So I prefer to have one of those members. Because there's a ton of people out there who's been doing oyster mats, and I can get the county guy. They're not the ones that's going to issue the permit.
Right.
I prefer to have the person who's going to issue the permit, or his designee, or someone from that organization or agency, or even a PR person from that agency give us the info. Because that's where it's going to be legit.
That's where it's going to be. That's what's going to determine our success as far as getting this thing done.
If we submit a permit, and if it doesn't meet the requirements, we could come back by saying, this person said it was this way, and this person came from your organization. And they're going to, and typically they'll say, you're right, you're right. However, if you say, we got it from this person who is a totally different, they're going to say, that's not part of our agency. And I've been to many projects where that has happened, and it makes it, a difficult issue later on.
Okay. I'm in agreement with that. I would like to see Mr. Beal or one of his designees at the next meeting, if at all possible. If that doesn't happen...
I'll try to get St. John's here, a representative from St. John's.
Okay. Maybe if that doesn't happen, we can have enough advance notice that we can at least get some input from the other agency. Possibly.
Our issue is, and again, we appreciate, getting information. We have to have these agendas to the clerk's office, almost a week ahead of time.
At least a week ahead.
And so when we met last time, when you reviewed the draft, we submitted it.
Okay.
We can't wait. We get in trouble through the clerk's office if we wait too long. That's why if you send us something on a Thursday, it's done. We've already got the package ready to go. We have to meet the clerk's office, to meet the publishing issues.
What we'll do then is look for St. John's next meeting, and then possibly the meeting after that, go with your agency, Mr. Gill. Do it that way. We don't have any conflict. So we're looking for Mr. Gill possibly a November meeting, and hopefully for St. John's, the freshwater management, October meeting.
One of the reasons, Mr. Chair, that I am going with the Lagoon Preserve people is they already received their permit, and if there's any input on what we are writing down, they can almost collaborate with us on how they got their permit, and they were the ones who first did the survey on our section of Sebastian. So that was one of the reasons why I'm also going to get some input from them. They were, like I said, they already did place bags on island number 1.
If possible.
So it would be helpful for November.
Well, what I was thinking of, what might be helpful, at least by the November meeting, if we could maybe get a copy of their permit, of what they submitted,
on their side,
if it's allowable. I don't see why it wouldn't. I mean, if we could copy it, possibly that might be advantageous, or at least some of the dialogue, and then go forward from there. Because if you said they already have approved permits, that's already a done deal.
Permits are public records, so there shouldn't be any problem getting those.
Excellent. Okay. Any further discussion on the restoration of the oyster mats? Any other committee members? Thank you. Let's go on to item B, the Champion Tree Program, update by Mr. James. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
In the audience.
Can you bring us some information regarding how your project's going, and any details, any updates on your Eagle project? I need you to come up to the microphone. Please state your name for the record also.
John Giordano,
Okay. And you're with Troop
500.
500. Okay, very good. Thank you. And where are you at with the modifications, or have you discussed that with the Eagle Chair or anything at this point?
Well, I mean, we don't,
We don't have anything definitive yet, so you really haven't made any motion with that?
yeah.
Okay.
His project already had the oyster mats down.
Okay.
He did mention it to the Eagle Chair that it might have to, or be a combination of both, and he didn't see any problem with that.
Okay, great.
It's just getting something definitive.
It's just
because
getting something
the
going.
end justifies the means.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're going towards the same goal and in the same area, so I don't
Okay.
think there's a problem with that. And as
I'll
far as the PVC pipe and the flags and everything, he already had that in his proposal, the markers.
Okay, great.
Okay, so he already put that down as materials.
Did you get a copy of this yet? This, the question and answer from the permit? Just maybe you could put it with your documentation?
No.
Okay, well, I think you have it now.
I have plenty of copies.
Well, you've got it now. That way you can kind of help put that within some of your documentation. And I hope you're recording all of the times that you're showing up here at the meeting and coming in with us also as part of your documentation. Okay?
John,
Excellent.
John,
Keep
I
up
have
the good
to
work.
add, did you guys, I saw the oyster mounds is slowly depleting. So you guys obviously took quite a bit of oyster shells already. Am I right, from the city depot?
We didn't take any from the depot.
Really?
Yes.
Where did
We
you acquire
We
them
did
from?
use the ones from, like I said, John and I had gone down and asked the Power Squadron for some materials, and he's planning on doing a workshop on September 19th for our Meet the Troops out at the camp as well. So
I was
it's just,
gonna ask-
it's just an educational, again, for the boys.
Right.
You know, so.
Because I was going to ask Mr. Watanabe if it's okay for the Boy Scouts to take some of those shells from that area, because we do have quite a bit. If they needed it.
I believe the oyster shells were for the project, so they are your shells.
Right.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because I lined up all those buckets, and if you needed them, you can just take a few buckets from there, you know, if you needed it. There's
Right,
quite a
once
bit of
we get a
shells there.
direction, I guess we're going to take all of those, and they need to be soaked in bleach and, you know, different things to disinfect them, and, you know, we can
Well,
start
ours are
drilling.
cured already, so there's
yeah.
no problem there.
I'm hoping by next meeting that will be basically by the conclusion of that meeting, have a direction of going to, of where we're going, how we're going, and have the information needed to proceed. And hopefully I'll be able to submit the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer permit by that point. And then if there's any other permitting by St. John's or anybody else, that we'll have that well on the way and go forward.
And you brought up an interesting question, and I was thinking about it. Both of us actually have been in touch with Kate Brown up at the zoo, biologist there. And a very interesting question is, what do you consider success? And maybe John can give her a call and see, as a biologist, what they consider, how they measure, you know, a form of success.
Sure, we'd love to have that input, what they measure success with. Excellent.
You know, what their criteria, you know, would be, you know, for a successful area. So,
Great. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Moving forward to the Champion Tree Program, update by Mr. James Clifton, our newest regular member.
Thank you. Yeah, the Champion Tree Program's moving along. We've had the nomination form that residents will download from the website ultimately to recommend their tree for measurement. It also contains basically a hold harmless clause in it, so it's been approved by Bob Ginsberg, the the city attorney. We've got the field notes form is all done that we will take out in the field with us to make the measurements. So hopefully before the next meeting, I'm hoping to get up with the webpage folks for the city and have a show so that we can all take a look and see what it should look like once it goes online.
And you're wanting that for like next meeting?
I'm hoping by next meeting we'll have.
Okay. Let's bring that up also under items for next agenda, that we make sure that's adjoined, and if you want to just re-mention that again.
Mr. Chair, I just had one question for James again. So I know we've had a long discussion about this. I just couldn't remember exactly how it all came down. So residents will submit a form on the web, and that'll go to what's the process again?
Essentially, they're on the form, there's an address for the city.
Okay.
They can drop it off, they can mail it, whatever. It will be collected, and we will get those forms at a meeting, and then they will be dispensed to whoever's going to do the measurements.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask, are those going to be native trees then, or are we going to let invasive?
Should be.
The state of Florida allows naturalized, non-invasive trees also, in addition to native trees. So I would think we would follow the Florida state protocol there, unless the group wants to do otherwise.
I'll just ask, is there any discussion about not complying with or going along with the state of Florida guidelines? My suggestion is let's go ahead and maintain the state of Florida guidelines for this project. Okay, any other discussion?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Our next agenda item is the NRB banner, update by Jack Lampatsky.
Lampiazzi. I emailed everybody a week ago today, and I made a hard copy for everybody. It's a piece of paper that says Juneau Message Center on the top, I just pointed out what I learned throughout the last month, that the parade is in fact Saturday, December 5th, and it's going to start at 6 o'clock. The information about the banner is pretty straightforward, and it coincides in every way except one with the description in our minutes on page 10 of the August 4th NRB meeting. The one thing that the printers felt was a standard size was 9 by 3, where we had talked about at least 10 feet wide. So I guess there's no big problem to adapt to that, I wouldn't think. And then secondly, with today's technology, the artwork that's already available for the dive bombing brown pelican and the logo and so forth, that can all be booted right over to the printer that we decide to use from our city's tech department and through Michelle, I guess.
I just wanted to let you know that I talked to Barbara. She does special graphics for us, among other things. She said that she can do a banner through her program, and the cost would be like $41 to do the banner that you guys would like, and she could send it to Vistaprint. We just have to
I was
get
wondering,
together with her.
Frank mentioned last time about, I didn't know, the city had a sign department. Could the signs be done by the city as well?
To answer the question regarding the sign, yes, we can. However, we have to. The issue is, it's allocation of staff, and we're trying to get away from creating our own signs. We just like everybody else now, we order the signs. We only make signs for emergencies as needed, because nowadays it's just cheaper just to order it and then have it shipped in, and we get a sign within a day. So for the time of manpower for us to create one, it's just cheaper just to order one. But we could do that on a special case. So whether we make it or order one, I have no problem with that. I think the issue with Barbara, who's our she works as our in the clerk's office, but she does also our IT and all these web pages. She does have a program, and that was great that she offers. She's offering to help Michelle. If you guys give her what you want, she'll create the banner, and then we'll just forward it on to the printing companies, and then they'll print it out. So it just kind of saves a step.
It still will go through a printer.
Yeah, we can't manufacture it. But then she could do the graphics. She can create the graphics where if you send it to printing companies, they pretty much want a done deal. So you're going to have to try to create your own graphics, some sort of software program. She's got it all. So she could do very nicely.
The actual physical banner would still come from one of these vendors.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. No, all right, I'm clearer now than I was
Yeah.
before.
I
My
just have,
suggestion would be to coordinate, maybe contact Barbara and work with her, and she's willing to help be like a contact through Michelle, of course, Chair, if that's all right. And
Right.
that way, since Jack's the lead person on it, then, maybe get a sample by the next meeting, before we send it to the printers. I think the board should at least look at what it's going to look like. That's my
absolutely,
suggestion.
that sounds like a great idea, especially because I would like to be able to participate with the Christmas parade, City of Sebastian's Christmas parade, and be involved in that. I do have a question, Michelle. You mentioned something about $42, and then saying to Vistaprint. I know Vistaprint's not one of the vendors here printed. Is there any better pricing from Vistaprint that we're not aware of, or?
Per Barbara, that's what she explained to me, that they would be cheaper than what we have on here thus far. So
And it would be like the heavy type of gauge
would
of
be,
sign, and
yeah, heavy
it
vinyl.
wouldn't be a cheaper grade or anything of that nature.
No.
Okay.
And like Mr. Watanabe was saying, at the next meeting, you guys can see what we come up with, and if you like it, you can approve it. And so it's just another option, and it may be, very cost effective.
And then how long would it take to get, once we make the approval, how long would it take to make it happen?
I'm not sure, but I'll find out.
Okay.
So if you want me to get the ball rolling on this and you're okay with it, then I'll talk to Barbara, or we can, and make things happen.
Super. Great. And I just want to thank you, Jack, for all the work you did with this and getting that outlined and things. I'll make some more comments about that a little bit later.
Could I just
Under staff
add one more
matters.
thing, though? We're not talking about, I don't think, setting up a tent on December 5th.
No, I think what
We're just talking about
we're
walking. the
basically, I
parade.
think we're talking about walking the parade at this point. I think we need to kind of slowly introduce ourselves into the activities, because we haven't been really dealing with a lot of these activities yet. But like I said, I would like to see us getting some notoriety and things. And I think walking the parade first, we get a good step, and maybe then other festivals or whatever, possibly setting up a small tent at that point.
And that's when we would need signs. We don't need.
Well, I think we need a signs for walking in the parade. You need something, the
Oh, you
banner
do?
to carry. Yes, I think, because, when you have a group of people walking in a parade, you want to know who they're established with, be it one of our community vendors, or be it one of the representatives in the community,
Beyond
or
the
even a
banner.
council. No, not necessarily beyond the banner. The banner would be like
Behind
a
the
walk.
banner.
Behind the banner would be members of the board here walking. But, we would be holding the banner and leading it, so people know what group of individuals are
No,
present.
obviously that, but what are the signs for?
I think the signs would be for, like, when on the Earth Day event.
Right, not in the parade.
Displays. No, not in the
Yeah,
parade.
okay.
Not in the parade, but the banner would be for the parade.
Mm-hmm.
The signs would be like at a tent event but if we
Right.
can get it all done at the same time and then go from there. Just so we have it on hand, so we won't have to bring it up for future, meetings and things. Any discussion, any further discussion or suggestions on the signs? Not at this time?
On the parade, Mr. Chair, I'd like to maybe suggest you can use a pickup truck, and we perhaps decorate the pickup truck with a so-called champion tree. Maybe hand out a couple of flyers. I don't know how the board thinks about that, about what it is, the job description that the City of Sebastian, the Natural Resource Board does. And we can hand out a few. We're not saying hand out hundreds of them, because it could turn into litter, but at the same time, give every other or every half block a flyer representing the slight job description of the Natural Resource Board plus the website.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That, or even have something focused with the oyster project and things of that nature. So those would be great ideas, but I think we can discuss more of that more in detail at the October meeting. So we'd like to bring that up where it talks about next month's agenda. Okay. Thank you again, Jack, for an excellent job and coordinating with all that. Earth Day update on vendors and entertainment by Ms. Rose Glazer.
I started compiling a new vendor list. I had from a couple of months ago, we were emailed Ann's copies from last year vendors, and then I had Gil's list that when they signed in the notebook, and I took as much as I could to break down the email to figure out what company it was or whatever. So I have a spreadsheet of 3 pages started with the name of the company or organization, who's responsible, telephone number, email, when they participated, and Andrea was given last year's information, so she also started a spreadsheet. So between hers and mine, we should be pretty complete, and I will merge these all together. She did a registration for 2016, so we're ready to send out our first blurb on Save the Date. And I started with a little festival planning sheet. We decided we were going to do it April 23rd. Our time's going to be 8:30 to 3. Setup's going to be from 7 to 8:30. And then I made up an email, which is nrbearthday@gmail.com. So it can be sent to that instead of my own personal email, so I can keep track of it better. Schedule of events, exhibitors, vendors, food vendors, trash recycling. Was that Waste Management that did that last year?
I believe it was.
And should I contact the local office for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, Rose, to help out, we have a city staff person who coordinates with solid waste, waste management. So you may want to contact in our planning department. It was Dory Bosworth. We get you the contact person.
Okay.
Her name was Dory Bosworth, and she has all the information regarding waste management.
Okay.
And so that work, and they'll be happy to work. They're in our contract are required to do these community recycles.
Okay. They did an excellent job last year. As we get closer, we'll look into radio, paper, and magazine advertising. Definitely our local little Sebastian blurps and that kind of stuff. Hometown News always does a little blurb for you. Frank gave me the layout of the park, and I also have Gil's copy from last year. So I have those to work off. Gil's has the electrical outlets, but I'll also walk the park and make sure I have my trees at the appropriate spot so I can lay out my areas. I wondered about moving our tent over to the stage area instead of being across the park and running back and forth all day. If Pelican Island used to set the stage and then their booth was next door, if that would be more convenient, then...
What's our thought about greeting, when we greet the vendors to come in?
I plan on having all the vendors know where they're going before they even come to the festival. Like every time I was a participant, we knew where our location was going to be. We knew where we had to park to set up, and it was all organized. We parked and we moved our cars as soon as we were done. They can still greet us at our booth and know where we are set up if we're close to the stage. I like to get it more centerized this year, where last year we kind of just did a half a loop, and then the stage was over here, and I like to get a little bit snugger.
Okay, I think those are great ideas. Also, one thing I did last year was I walked around a lot, and I went and communicated with the various vendors and things of that nature, see if they needed anything or if they had any questions about the setup, and things of that nature with the fire extinguishers and things like that. And I'm glad we did real well with that aspect of it also. I want to thank staff again for making sure we had the right extinguishers and everything was in place.
I have more.
Okay.
I'll keep track of how many tents, chairs, and things we have, tables we need for our exhibitors. And last year, our personal ones, we had 4 tables and 10 chairs. I also looked into pop-up tents, and they go anywhere from $99 to $200, $229, depending if we want powder-coated steel and wind-protected, and so it depends.
I don't think we have to go crazy with an expensive one, because we're limited use.
Chair,
Yes, Michelle.
I'm actually looking into getting you a tent, a pop-up tent, a good one.
Oh, great.
So I'm working with one of my bosses to get that for you guys. And a laser pointer for the champion tree program as well. So
The best price on pop-up I found so far was Northern Tool
okay.
for the quality.
What I'll do is by next meeting or before then, I can send an email out. Is that okay, Frank?
To help out, we purchased one, and it's a very good one. It's a pop-up tent. We use it as our tent we have for events. Actually, we loaned it to the police department. It's a very nice one, and I think it cost us $100. And as I made a commitment last time, I've contacted our Public Works deputy, and they'll get you the tent.
Fantastic. Good. So it's one thing we don't have to worry about.
So then I also have a budget, so will be the banner, sandwich boards. We talked about stamps, the kids doing some kind of scavenger hunt or something and having stamps that they could get their page blotted with. But that also means having ink at the different places, and I don't know that we want to go there. I'm thinking maybe a signature from
Well,
a vendor.
if you have a stamp pad, or sometimes there's the stamps that are self-inking.
Self-inking would work, but I'd hate to have every clue or answer have their own ink pad.
Right.
So just
Like I
something
said,
to think about when we get
maybe look at
closer.
self-inking ink pads, or self-inking stamps or something of that nature.
Entertainment, we still need to decide if we're going to do a PA or a DJ or musicians. And Michelle does have the stage and PA reserved for us.
Excellent.
And then raffles, I'll keep a list of the items, a better list this year. I liked how the Chamber of Commerce does it. They always turn it in on an envelope so it has the name of their company and their address and all the information right there, so you can go down and give them a little bit more info. Do you want me to start the questions and answers for that?
Yes. Like I said, I'm not really keen on handing out the tickets like we
Right.
did in the past year.
So we'll do a little
Because so
question
many
and
people
answer.
come and go and they're not around for the
Like
whole
how many
event.
parks are in the city of Sebastian, or how many rivers
Something
in
of that
Indian
nature.
River County, or
Who
something like that?
can give the best answer for the purpose of the Champion Tree Program, or what's on, how many gallons of water can oyster filter a day?
I'll go ahead and start that.
Those things.
Activities, we'll have the kayaking again. I've contacted the teacher about the poetry contest, but she has not gotten back with me. I also have her school number, and I meant to do that yesterday when I was home, but I forgot. I have my mother out of the hospital with me. I'm working on the scavenger hunt, and Kristen Beck with Florida Outdoor Center is willing to do a wide tire bike competition if we have a section of street we're allowed to close off. I didn't remember last year that we did, because I think when the K-9 did their demonstration, that street's open, right, on
That's
Indian River
correct.
Drive?
It stayed open.
And then the
right.
side street where Waste Management was,
That was open
the whole way.
also. I don't think we're going to be able to close off a portion of the street, or maybe we might be able for a short period of time, possibly.
If the event needs to have, let's say, I think Harrison Street's the one right next to the park. It's not the main one, Sebastian, but the Harrison is between, the splash pad and the park. That's not heavily used. We close it quite often for most of our other events like clam bakes. I don't see a problem. If you want to close the park temporarily, we could provide that service. We could barricade it off and close and secure it like we do other events. I think this event is large enough, and it needs to have, a larger. If you're going to create a larger exhibit and have the need for a street closure, I don't see a problem.
Okay.
Right. Well,
She has
that's
a
good
fleet
news.
of wide tire bikes, and they did it at a festival in Vero this year and had like 126 kids take the challenge.
great.
If that's a possibility,
Okay.
my answer would be we'll be happy to help out, and we'll close the street.
Okay. I'm trying to get more hands-on things that we can
Excellent.
bring kids in. And
Right.
so if you don't care, I'll just go with it.
Go with it.
Okay.
Any further discussion from anybody else, or I think it's good. I did. Yes, sir.
Just to bring my experience from Sri Lanka about the idea is to give publicity and make the public aware of maintaining the ecosystem. And I think in this context, the children would matter a lot. Now, what we did in Sri Lanka was, one of the items I'm saying, is we conducted an essay competition. The importance of the ecosystem and the natural resources, looking after them, renewable energy and that type of so. You can have a wide variety of topics for the essays and have a competition so that you generate some sort of a awareness among the children. So that brings up so that the future generation will look after the earth.
Right. I think that's a great idea, especially for our tent, our display. for the Natural Resource Board, also for some discussion from the stage, kind of a combination of both areas. I think that's, great as far as being informative to not only to the children, but also the general public. Make it where it's conducive to all points. So we can maybe make a note of that to add something of that nature, and for at least our tent and for the PA system for general audience in between, working with the DJ and things like that. Mm-hmm. So that'd be great. Thank you very much. Any other insider input? We want to thank.
The emails we had Bruce Dangerfield's name. Are we really going to go after someone like that? We had the Wildlife Festival in March, so he usually sets up at that. I don't look at Earth Day really being wildlife, so I question.
Well, I mean, wildlife is a point of, the ecosystem and things like that. When you talk about like the Everglades and the wildlife that's in the Everglades and
If you look up Earth Day, it's a holiday which individuals and groups are encouraged to plant trees, and it's more earthbound, not animals. I just wondered, with them already being there in March, if we needed to really go that direction.
Mr. Chair and Rose, I think it's important to have some sort of animal exhibit there. There's a lot of people, South Florida, bird sanctuaries, they're willing to come up. We need to contact them. If we did want them up there to come up and participate in the park, they'll give a little 20-minute demonstration. They talk about the birds. We can section off a little section, and the birds are there on their pedestals, and it keeps the people in the park. It helps keep them in the park for a little bit, and I think it helps us as far as what we're generating and want to do.
I'm just saying that's already done at the Wildlife Festival, though, a month ahead of time.
Well, I think my opinion is if
we want to capture,
we have maybe a section. I mean, it's not like they're dominating, but maybe like they have a tent, like a viewing, like we would have a viewing, or other areas would have a viewing where they could discuss. Also, like Mr. Gill mentioned, it can attract kids. Usually, animals or small animals do attract, children and things like that. It kind of piques their interest. I think we could probably include that along with, if he doesn't mind coming out twice, because that gives him some exposure also.
He's not the only institution or
I know we have the Parrot Rescue, and
we can call upon, just like we call upon Halo, and they didn't come up last year,
So
walked
we're
a couple of
gonna do
puppies
exotic
around.
animals too, or?
I would like to see more native, animals and things of that nature that would be here, or at least education on the native animals, not necessarily the exotics from afar off. I would like to kind of keep it close here to what we see in our normal day-to-day activities and things of that nature.
Okay.
I was going to try and find on another level some Native Americans in the state of Florida that are willing to come and talk about how they preserve the natural resources in the state of Florida. I mean, there's a lot of history in Florida with Indians and Native culture, and I think that'd be really interesting also to have.
Yeah, that
I
might.
was going to look into one particular.
I tell you what, at the next meeting, if you have any suggestions for that, let's bring it forward at that point for the next meeting, and discuss under that. Or if you can email Michelle the contact information, she can email it out to Rose and the other the other board members. Okay. Earth Day webpage update. I think that you kind of covered a lot of that already with those things. Any further discussion on Earth Day at this point? There being none, let's go to public input. Any members of the public would like to say anything this evening about the topics we've discussed or possible topics for the future? There being none, I also want to say thank you very much. I see we have a representative tonight from the Sebastian News, and I appreciate her being here tonight with us. Any new business to be discussed? Anybody want to bring up anything else at this point?
Is that the signage? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead and, what your discussion with the signage. We saw an email, I saw an email copy of an email about you requesting additional signs, possibly to go up at some of the marinas,
The two marinas.
at the two marinas. What was, I think you
What I
briefly
saw
mentioned
was
that.
a little off is that you don't see the sign. You can, people tend to ignore the sign. There's only one, like say at Main Street, there's one signage on the northbound side. There's one small square, I believe it's like 18 by 18, the sign. It says, please, if you visit the islands, please bring your trash back to the mainland. People seem to just like walk by, and you really can't notice it because it's not bright enough. It's black and white, and I think we discussed it to put two signs up, and there's nothing on the other side of the walkway. There's two ramps. It's the same situation with the yacht club. But if we could make it black and yellow where people will walk up and they get on their walkway to get onto their boat, and they'll be able to vividly see that sign. Right now, it's just like any...
My question is this.
Not brilliant enough in order to take notice.
My suggestion on that is,
And the city.
why
was
are they
nice.
not, I can remember when we used to go out to Island Number 1 to do the cleanups. I was amazed, I mean, I took notice of the signs. They were readily noticeable to me at the time that they were there, when we were there. There's basically one pathway to get on boats and things like that. I think the docking's pretty much on one side of the ramp.
Two.
There's two on the side.
North side and the south side on both marinas.
But the thing about it is, if they're not noticing it now or they're not doing it now, because I know we picked up huge amount of trash, I think maybe a way of attracting the public to those items, maybe another public way of doing it would be better than the cost of putting another sign up.
I was on the board of PIP.
Any other comments about the signage? People using the boat ramps or anything of that nature? Have you all noticed the signs regarding bringing your trash back with you? You know, don't leave it out on the island. Have you all noticed those signs that are posted already, or no? Or do you think additional signs would be merited?
Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just want to highlight, I think it's a perk that, that I'm sitting here, that I know that there's always these requests like just a road closure. However, in the future, if a chair or a commission wants to have something, we get calls. I get calls every day from everything under the sun. That includes signage, markings, cleanings.
Right.
And I mentioned this before. I got a limited crew that has to take care of the entire city, and the commission here is no different than the public. I see, unless the commission board wants to do something. If the board, like this Earth Day, wants to do something, I have no problem as staff to this board. However, as individual commissioners asking and emailing me, I prefer it comes from the board, from the chair.
Right.
Individually, you're no different than the public, and that's how it should be. Just because you're given this title doesn't give you the extra plus to give the public works director a call and say, I want to sign. I don't think that's right. I think the board should ask, and then I'll be happy as staff to the board to help.
Right. I'm in agreement with what you said. I know we discussed this earlier regarding, I just wanted to get some of the input about the sign, because my opinion right now is if they're not paying attention to the sign now, it's not really going to make any difference by putting another sign up. And that's also just going to be another obstacle or another expense to the city to maintain. Maybe at some later point in time, when it's time or it's need be that those signs are changed out because of fading or just not being there anymore for whatever
Chair,
reason.
To answer your question on the signage, we've looked at it based on, there is a sign already there, and it's not faded. I have a real issue regarding sign clutter as well. From a traffic
agree.
standpoint, informational standpoint, more signs doesn't make it better.
I agree.
No different than a stop sign, no different than any informational signs. The more, it doesn't make it any better. It doesn't enforce it, doesn't strengthen it. The signs are already out there. No different if a resident or a citizen calls and says, we want something, we look at it, it meets the criteria. I believe it does. And I think we're fine. Changing the sign to different colors and different shapes. Well, I have to follow certain regulatory requirements on signs. So if you wanted something on orange, I can't. You want something on red, I can't. There's certain guidelines I have to follow under the state, under the signage that we have to provide. Because you give the wrong sign, the wrong pretense, a person may see it as something totally different. And I can't do that as a professional. We have to follow certain guidelines on signs.
Okay. Well, the only thing I was going to suggest is when the time comes that a change is needed in the signage, be it because of code, because of language, or, like I said, natural fading over time. Maybe we could possibly change the color from a white and black to a yellow. I don't know if that would be permissible, but
It's not.
it's not. Okay, it has to be white and black. Okay, then that resolves it. So when it comes up, it'll just be the same type of sign.
You could change the sign more and more if you notice, the signs are more international symbols. They're using more and more symbols nowadays. I have no problem switching from a narrative sign. You have to have some wording still because you have to have it, but use more symbols. Nowadays, it's becoming more international, so symbols are the way to go. So I don't mind having signs that have some sort of symbol on it. This, whatever it takes to highlight, some kind of catches your eye. That's why you use symbols, and you don't have to have a person who doesn't speak English could then understand the sign as well if you have symbols. But I have no problem if the day comes, if it's too faded out, or if it gets knocked down, or it gets damaged. I'll be happy to replace it. But currently, right now, there's a proper sign up there that's posted.
And we're just curious, approximately what do signs cost the city every time
About
sign is
$200.
changed?
About $200.
About $200. Okay.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
I've got just a thought. I walk down Barber Street every morning, almost every morning, and there's litter along the street. So putting up a sign won't help because people either can't read, can't comprehend, or don't care. So I don't think another sign is going to solve the issue that's our problem here.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Next.
Okay, I think, Mr. Gill, your point was brought up was a good point, but like Jim brought it forward, I don't think necessarily just additional signage is going to produce individuals from being more environmentally conscious and friendly. Unfortunately, especially when they're just dropping litter. I know I've seen people walking on Barber Street just drop something and keep on walking. I think maybe what we could maybe do more advantageously is maybe have some cleanup days on the islands, that are within the Sebastian city limits or along the coastline, or even the type of thing like Adopt a Highway program, where we could get other individuals and other companies included, because I really haven't seen a lot of that around the Sebastian area as far as Adopt a Highway, as far as coming out and picking up trash. I've seen some individuals on Powerline Road, but that's about the only place I've really noticed people out there, policing the area for debris and, other people being insensitive. So,
Speaking of island cleanup, Mr. Chair, for the public to know, and on September 19th is a Saturday from 8 to about 11:30, there is an Keep Indian River Beautiful will be conducting the International Coastal Conservation Island Cleanup. It's a cleanup. Us as a board, we participated because we did adopt an island number 1 in Sebastian Waters. If any of the members would like to participate, it is not a quorum. As an individual, you can sign up with curb down at the Indian River Mall, Keep Indian River Beautiful, with the ladies down there, and sign up. We will start at Main Street at 8 o'clock on that Saturday.
and that's Saturday what?
The 19th.
The 19th of September? Or you can contact me, send me an email, and you can be part of my group who goes out. We've got a couple other boats. We are also looking for vessels, if it's possible. Anyone who'd like to contribute a boat for a couple hours to transport people and perhaps bring some light garbage back to the mainland after doing the cleanup. But as far as other members showing up, it's not a quorum. We're not getting together as a,
Well, I think
as a group.
as long as we're not establishing something.
Individual thing.
Right. It's any individuals in the city as well as on the board that want to participate in an event of that nature is not necessarily designated as a activity of the board like our past cleanups have been.
Right.
You know, they're always, I encourage everybody to somehow participate, be it at the Main Street ramp or be it at any other location within the county. I think that's being environmentally sensitive, and that's something we should do. However, like I said, we need to be careful that we don't necessarily condone that as a part of the board, although we do figuratively support
Right.
keeping the Indian River
You would be
beautiful.
participating as an individual, not as a board member.
Okay. We talked about the signs under new business, staff matters. Mr. Watanabe, any staff matters? we
None
have?
tonight.
Not tonight. Ms. Michelle, any staff members? Matters?
No, not tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Member matters. I would like to just open up for discussion. We'll start down at this end of the table. Any? Okay. No?
We want to make ourselves more present in front of the city. Our next major festival here in town is the Clam Bake. Is that something we want to set up at? It is Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, so it does take a lot to man a tent for that one.
What date is
Is
that?
that the first weekend in November?
That's correct. And I think that's a great idea.
It is difficult, there's a lot of hours to cover.
Another question for that. If we do have a
Hold
representation.
on. First weekend in November.
The Clam Bake.
This is when those signs would be great, Jack.
Now, is Jack talking about signs or posters?
So it'd be the
I'm
6th, 7th,
confused
and 8th
on
of
that.
November. Friday starting at 4 o'clock.
6th, 7th, and 8th of November. Let's open that up for discussion. I know we're a little bit after 7. I was hoping to get out of here by 7, but any input on the issue of, or do we, I guess we need to reserve that for next meeting.
I
Put
would
that on
highly
next meeting
suggest if you can
agenda.
discuss and act on it, you need to agendize it. You could place it on the agenda for the next meeting. I
Yeah.
think you have plenty of time,
We'll
but
have-
I think it's a good idea.
We'll have that on next agenda, so please, we'll discuss that next meeting. As far as making that an agenda item, Ms. Michelle, make that an agenda item for next meeting.
Okay.
And please, board members, be ready with any positive or negative comments. And also, please see your availability. Maybe you can serve on one evening or part of a day or the whole time. You know, depends on what your schedules allow.
Chair, just to help out too, we'll check with the Parks and Recs and make sure that if there's a due date and whatever has to be done, we'll kind of like maybe give you a foothold just in case you guys do want to do it. We'll try to make sure we reserve something for this commission.
Could we also have a reserved tent?
The
you
tent will
mentioned,
provide
Bill.
you. If this is going to be a board action that wants to be there, then we'll make sure, I'll make sure that your tent's there, your table's there,
Okay.
on behalf
Thank
of the
you.
city.
Great, because I think that would be important, especially during those wonderful daylight hours where the sun still shines pretty warmly in Florida. Thank you very much. That's an excellent idea, and we'll discuss it next meeting. Beginning the far end of this side of the table. Anything?
Since I am not particularly familiar with this Champion Tree program, just to find out, how do you propose to give publicity for this program in the city for the people to know that this is going on?
I think we mentioned before that we have it on our website.
On the website.
And Jim, you're heading up. You want to add anything to that?
the program was more active several years ago, but probably in the past 5 years, it's kind of fallen into a limbo, and we're working to rejuvenate it and make it more active and more continuous, so that it's an ongoing program. Yes.
Chair, my suggestion would be once you get this thing finalized, this Champion Tree program, I think is a great program that Jim's been taking the lead. Maybe bring it in front of the council as a presentation to them. And that way it's televised under the city council meetings, and that way they can see a brand new program restarted up again. I think it's a worthwhile program to present to the city council.
Excellent. And also when we possibly know how we measure the trees and things of that nature, maybe we can put together a short presentation. Okay, it would be excellent.
It is useful to carry an article in one of the papers that gets circulated in the city, Sebastian River paper.
Yeah, that's as part of the publication, as publicity, we can do things like that. But let's make sure everything's ironed out and we have all our ducks in a row before we go there. Then Jim, maybe next meeting you can give us an update on those items.
That's the plan.
Right, exactly. Bob or Jim, do you have anything?
I have one thing. I was at the council meeting last Wednesday, and after conversations about the bulkhead issues in the city, one gentleman got up and during the public input section and was not in favor of the general populace of being responsible for maintaining the bulkhead system. I think everybody on this board understands that the bulkheads, the stormwater system, it's an integral thing that goes from the little swales in our yards, gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets down to the main channels that are bulkheaded. So in my view, we all have a responsibility. I'm just curious if this board should be involved and how we should be involved and et cetera. I guess I'd address that to Mr. Watanabe.
What the commissioner Jim Clinton talking about is the seawalls. The item was brought in front of the city council was we had an assessment done, an engineering assessment on the seawalls. Our consultant gave a draft presentation of the results. Overall, the results shows that the seawall system, there's only 12 that we consider to be impacted. The rest of the 600 and so many seawall properties are either fair and good condition. So overall, our seawall system is fine or good, it's intact. They also went through the agencies and identified several options. What would be the preferred option to put in a brand new wall or entomb it, put a slope or some sort of a hybrid in between. I think the question comes out to be, and the direction that I think the city is looking more towards is the direction I have right now. If a wall currently impacted falls into the canal, because I've been placed on notice on some of these walls, especially the concrete ones, may have asbestos, and because I've been informed by the DEP, and this is DEP for airborne asbestos, not the water quality, my automatic response for public safety is just to bury it. I'll go out there with a truckload of dirt and bury it. I mean, because it's a public safety issue. If that wall collapses, I will go out there and bury it and slope it and sod it, and we'll be done. I think the council wants to have a more definitive what is the overall direction we want to go with these 12, but if emergency happens, the sloping is the way to go. The embankments we have, and the study shows about 37% of all our embankments are earth berms, earth slopes. I think when it comes back to those options where we start talking about the environmental impacts, it is a canal system, but it's still a waterway system, and it does kind of tie into the Natural Resource Committee. It does. So there is some nexus there. So as this project moves forward towards earth embankments, I think this commission may have a role. Please note that when we did, and I was involved in the Northern Canal project, the reason why there's no earth berms or slopes there was because from public input, there was a huge push at one time to do it, and then the issue became, well, we don't want alligators crawling up the banks, and literally, and then it flipped it around. It flipped it around because the cost to do the earth berm, I don't care what, a truckload of dirt and a loader back there, I could take care of it within a few hours and with only a few $100s of dirt. and I'm done, and I'm buried, and I'm gone. For me, because of the issue regarding asbestos, to have someone try to pull that wall out or break it apart, I mean, I don't want guys in white suits back there, you know. Whole issue, and DEP said, Mr. Watanabe, exactly what we would ask you to do. If that wall collapsed, bury it. That's what I'll do. I'll just bury it.
I think one thing, though, that with the burying it, and I understand the expense issue, is like the runoff aspects and things of that nature, if that would be considered a factor.
The issue would be one or two more
Oh, I'm not speaking about the asbestos in the wall, because I know
I'm talking about sloping. Overall,
the sloping.
it's not going to, it's only when you start talking about the entire length of the canal system, so I start changing the dynamics for the width and the depth of the waterway system. Yeah, it does play an issue. It does, because I have to maintain the capacity of the waterways. But
Right.
the other factors that we have, St. John's, people know we have as well. We have a stormwater park, it's like hurricane, potential hurricane is coming in. There's things that before we have to draw down the canals and get the water out. So that stormwater park, with that, those 3 pumps, each of those pumps pumps out 26,000 gallons of liquid. I could get the other canal within a half an hour. That's what we have a huge reservoir. If I had a storm or anything that pulls water out, I could pull it out of the stormwater park. That's what it was designed for. We don't ever do it. We don't ever do that because, you know, because of the impact it may have, you know, draining down the canal system. But we have that capability of emergency. That's what it was designed to do, was to pull that water into the stormwater park, and then there was natural stormwater park was a natural way to, you know, purify it, work its way through the wetlands, and goes back out through the river. So then it cleanses itself out. But we have those different tools that most cities don't have regarding seawalls and the canal systems. We have that. We have many ways we could take care of the canal system. So that's why it's not just the walls itself. We have other dam locations, other drop culverts in the stormwater park that all plays a component of this overall canal system that people don't have no idea of. That's when people say, well, if you lose the walls and you lose the capacity, you'll flood the city. No, this city is well prepared to handle the water system within the city. We have other tools.
Yeah, and I noticed also, and I just want to say thank you to the city also for the drainage canals being cleared and things of that nature, because I've also seen a continuation of the work and a lot of our drainage canals and the ditches throughout the city.
I do want our public works crew did a great job with this recent potential kind of like storm. We had no flooding. We had some, of course, we had heavy rain, but compared to like Vero and some of those areas that had major flooding, we had our city manager did well. We had our crews out there way before the storm. We cleared our ditches. We have a contractor cleaning our ditches, and so with this rainfall we had, zero. Everything flowed. Everything moved forward. So it's a system works.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much also to the members of the city and our city manager. Bob?
No, I was just going to mention, as someone who lives along the canal without a seawall, I have no interest in a seawall. I have native vegetation, native trees that stabilize the bank. I have 3 lots, 250 feet, and they're all planted with native trees, and it's a stable situation. So personally, I'd prefer to see that.
Jim, do you have anything else to add or any question? Okay. Mr. Gill?
No, sir, that's it.
No? Okay. I do want to bring up a couple of issues, or really one major one, that I've noticed some emails going out and with the city. The only thing I would request from the general members is if there's communication about public speakers or, you know, discussions toward another one of our natural resource board, let's try to bring that up at a meeting so we can have an advanced topic, or if there's something that comes up that we can, if there's some way that maybe staff can direct that to me, to being the chair. If there's something comes up that for some reason can't wait one meeting, if we can just direct that to the chair through staff, you know, because I don't want to violate any sunshine laws or anything of that nature. Bring those to my attention directly. But the best meeting is like under the topic as we're discussing next is items for the next agenda. That's really the time to bring those up. If we have someone that we want to have as a public speaker, bring those up. As if there's issues, member matters, bring that up at that time, okay? So if we can just kind of avoid some of the emails, because, as chair of this board at this point, I want this board to be reflective and as positive. Let's bring all the positive issues forward because we do a lot of great work here. And we want to bring those positive and positive notoriety, not the negative. Okay, yeah, we're not always going to be positive. There's going to be some negative. But let's bring it up in appropriate ways. Okay? I appreciate that. Items for the next agenda. I know during the meeting we discussed hopefully having Mr. Beal or someone from St. John's or freshwater management area to speak regarding the oyster mats. We talked about the Earth Day event and also the clam bake. We'd like to have those on the agenda for next meeting. Anybody else need to bring anything else up for the next meeting? I know, Bob, you're going to have those things ready and hopefully a cross-section. And if we have any of those items earlier, Bob, if we can get that to staff and then maybe we can have some exposure prior to the actual meeting, that'd be great because it would please me nothing better to have something that we could just sign off, review and approve and sign off and get this thing rolling by next meeting. That would be a delight to myself as well as I'm sure every other member, and especially yourself.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I'll do my best.
Thank you. Any other items from this end for next agenda items? Anybody down here? Andrew? No? Great. Michelle, maybe you want to have the issues about the signage for us, for the banner and the other little signs, because as you said, if we do participate in the clam bake, we'll need those additional signs for the canopies. With nothing else to be added, I'd like to adjourn this meeting.